Okay, well, and I think, yes, that is perfectly on time. So yes, I think it's the perfect moment, good timing, Jens. So we are ready to get started with our webinar. So yes, well, I would like to say good afternoon and welcome to our participants to join us on our webinar on the topic of enabling your business through integrated risk management. Yeah, we are very excited and keen to spend the next 1 hour and a half with you to share some insights with you and our points of view on how we think integrated risk management looks like. But before we do that, actually, we're addressing a couple of things there. First, we also want to, first of all, illustrate why it is so important to think about the need for integrated risk management. And then alongside with this, we will also illustrate and share some insights on how such a more integrated way of managing risk would look like. And last but not least, we also aim to share with you some of the steps that you could actually take in order to transform towards that more integrated way of managing risk. So with that being said, I think we have assembled quite a number of specialists and colleagues among the KPMG network. And let me briefly introduce the people that will be with you for this event today. So I'll start with Claire. So she's a specialist with extensive experience in GRC implementations. She has done that both at a global level as well as at the regional level here in our ASPAC, Asia Pacific region. So she will be one of our key speakers for today. And I'm also very glad that we can welcome Jens to this discussion, to this webinar as well. He has also extensive experience in the space of risk transformation, particularly within the financial services sector. And he will also share with us some of the insights and the things that he has observed within the FS sector. We also have with us Arpit, who is a ServiceNow platform architect, because we don't just only want to talk about the concept and the theory of integrated risk management, but we also want to showcase how it actually looks and feels like. So he will help us achieving this objective by having a demo for you as well. And from our KPMG Thailand Financial Services Advisory Group, we have Kun Amnat as well as Kun Sirigan joining us on this event, where Kun Amnat is specialized in the financial risk management, and Kun Sirigan is heading up our local GRC team for Thailand. And last but not least, myself, Florian, I'm actually heading up our technology risk management services. And in that sense, I'm helping my clients to really gain more trust into the way that they are using their technology and their IT and data. So with that being said, let us give you an outlook on the agenda that we have prepared for you for today. So we'll actually start by again providing some context, the kind of the challenges and the developments that we see as they relate to the way organizations are managing risk. Then we will also provide you with our points of view on what we believe a good way of managing risk looks like. So this is under this KPMG powered risk topic. And since these days everything is aimed to be delivered in a streamlined, digitized, and efficient way, so we'll also showcase on how this integrated risk management can be enabled and supported by the use of technology. At the end, we will have a recap on some of the key conclusions, the key takeaways, and that will also give us some room and some space to go through the questions that you might have as we go along these topics. So few notes there. So I mentioned questions. So please feel free at any point throughout the session to post your questions in the chat box that you have available here. So we will either address the questions as we go along, or as we have time available at the end of the session, we are looking to address it in the Q&A session. And another note, even though we are doing the presentation part of this event in the English version, but if you feel you rather prefer to submit your question or your query in Thai language, please feel free to do so. We're happy to also pick up any questions submitted to us in Thai. Another thing, throughout the session itself too, we will be posting certain polling questions for you. So for these questions, we will flash them up for a moment on the screen, so you can get an idea on what we are asking for, together with the available answer options. And then to the right in the panel of the WebEx, you will also see this question alongside the answer options. So please participate actively in these pollings. The questions will give us some perspective on where you are at this moment with respect to your way of managing a risk. And what we aim to do with the results of the poll is, as part of the debrief pack that we will be sharing after this event, we will consolidate the results from this poll and anonymize it and share back with you this analysis as an additional insight for you. So, okay, I think yeah, without much further ado, I think let's dive into the topics that we have prepared for you. And I will start off picking up on the question on why do we need to think about and look into ways of possibly doing risk management in a different way from what we are doing at the moment. Because oftentimes when we speak to our clients, there are a lot of kind of comments or complaints about risk management, where risk management is perceived as a function or as a team that's slowing down, or that's an obstacle to achieving the business growth. But there are a multitude of possible reasons behind that, be it for example, the risk team is being brought to the table too late on in a conversation. These days, I believe it's still far too often that we experience situation where we are looking at launching a new product or launching a new digital service, and rather than having an engaged discussion from a risk perspective early on in the process, we might bring the risk team to the table very late on in the process. And if we identify risks that late on in the process that might be a showstopper to continue with this initiative, well, obviously, yes, that will contribute to the image or to the reputation of risk, not so much being an advisor or an enabler, but as someone who is slowing things down. On a similar note, I think it's still far too often where we observe situation where there is a lot of manual effort, manual activities performed in order to achieve risk management objectives. I'm thinking here about maintaining spreadsheets with our risk registers, with our risk control self-assessments, and then a lot of manual effort and time being spent on converting the takeaways, the results from these spreadsheets into PowerPoints, to then present these for risk reporting purposes. So obviously that is not really something that is beneficial to be able to showcase the value that risk management or that a risk function is bringing to the organization. And on another hand, since we also talk about integrated risk management, if we do have these very manual ways of managing our risk, it also creates quite a bit of challenges to achieve a more integrated view of risk across the lines of defense. For example, if internal audit has limited visibility of the current risk profile and the risks that have been identified, it is fairly challenging then to shape the audit efforts in a way that they are aligned with the risks that have identified in our risk management activities. And it's this is actually resonated as well. Yes, we can move to the next slide. Okay, this is also aligned or with some of the key takeaways that we have from a recent survey that KPMG conducted among CEOs. So this is an additional emphasis or an additional reason to really look into the way we are managing risk these days. Because if we look at the asks or the requirements from CEOs, we're looking, there is a drive for more innovation, there's a drive for more harmonization, for more digitalization. While this is also, say, a challenge because now the expectations are higher, it's actually also an opportunity to say that, okay, now let's look at new ways of managing risk so that we are finding more innovative ways of managing the risk, finding ways how we can connect isolated silos of, say, risk management of risk databases to achieve a more harmonized view. And last but not least, do our part in contributing to the digitization that the whole enterprise is going through. So not letting it stop at the customer touch point, but also contributing to that broader digitalization throughout the entire organization. So with some of these kind of patterns and trends and challenges on the table, I think I would like to pass this on to Jens to provide us some further perspectives and views on what he sees as some of the trends, developments, and insights in the financial services sector across the region. So Jens, over to you.
Florian, thanks very much. And hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure being with you today this afternoon and talking to you about one of my favorite topics, right? Risk transformation. Why is it my favorite topic? Well, because it is really, really important for many organizations that I'm working with. Yeah, Florian has just mentioned a few reasons why that case for change is so important. And if you briefly reflect on the last slide that Florian spoke to, right? That's the top of the house view, the CEOs. And if you've seen the numbers there, right? 66%, 64, 74%. I think that gives a very clear indication how much top of mind all those topics are with the CEO. And that really means for the risk management functions, in many companies, right? That imperative to change, that's there because they're getting asked by their CEO every time, every day, right? How are you moving with the rest of the organization? Florian alluded to it, right? We're seeing a number of risk functions, and I'm working with a few of the risk functions at the moment on transformation pieces. There's one in particular that I have in mind, I won't say any names, of course, that really is in that space where the rest of the organization has started to move a lot faster. So the first line has started to move a lot faster. The CEO certainly, right, wants change very quickly, right? Where even the third line, which often you say internal audit, maybe is one of the slower movers in an organization, where they have started to move ahead, right? And again, to Florian's earlier point, now risk is sort of stuck in the middle as the function that isn't quite there yet and is increasingly seen as slowing the whole organization down. Not the spot that risk management wants to be, right? Risk wants to be the trusted advisor, wants to be the partner of the organization, really wants to be able to move the organization forward. But in that particular organization, that hasn't been the case. So risk now realizes that it's really time to do a transformation, to make a change, and to really look at how to integrate what's happening in the front line, what's been happening on the internal audit side with risk management to achieve all of those good things that Florian spoke about, right? And you see a few of them on the right-hand side here. The manual processes is something that I speak a lot to with this client? How do we get rid of those? How are we making sure that where there are operational issues, where there are control issues that are identified in some part of the organization, that they can actually be leveraged in other parts of the organization through a system, through a process that's integrated enough to be able to show that. Rapid change is also something that Florian already spoke to. And I think those first and the second point, they're somewhat connected in my mind. Yeah. Again, I have another client in mind when I talk about this, where the organization has spent a lot on the first line, has spent a lot on data governance, has spent a lot on integrating sort of some of the data, some of the approaches that you have in go-to-market. And I'm still having conversation with, in the case, the second and the third line of that organization. It goes like, yeah, there's so much good stuff we could do about integrated risk management. But in our organization, the data is so bad, there's nothing we can do. And it's not true anymore. It's just not true. The organization has moved on. Of course, the data isn't perfect. Whenever is it perfect, right? But there is enough there that that particular function could make a huge leap forward by actually using what's available, by really looking at their own processes and moving away from the, bespoke, once in a time, manual, slow approach and really make a change for the organization. So they would really benefit, again, if you look on the right-hand side, right, from that end-to-end perspective that clearly at the moment they don't have. So those are the organizations that doing a risk transformation, that are looking at integrated risk management and the benefits sort of for the first time. You'll hear a bit later from Claire that at KPMG, we've looked at integrated risk management for a long time, right? Over 5+ years, probably 10 years, and we have collected best practices. So when I work with those clients, what really helps them is that we're able to show them what good looks like. So we're really able to show them tested processes that are state of the art of what an integrated risk management function looks like. Now, that is slightly different to some of the other clients I'm working with. Again, one in particular, and we call them here the GRC 2.0 wave, right? So what do we mean by that? So there's obviously a number of organizations who were early adopters, a number of organizations who went into GRC when it came out. And very often what happened then was, because there were tools that were relatively new, they proud themselves to be super customizable. They could basically be anything for anybody. And organizations didn't have a lot of experience in using those tools in transforming their risk management. This is not to say that they shouldn't have done it. Absolutely, right? Those organizations have 3, sometimes 5+ years now of having had a risk management system and a risk management function that benefited from it, and an organization that benefited from it. But because the initial installations were often so customized, so specialized, the organization has grown around them, and they have realized that what they built in the beginning, very customized, was very difficult to scale, was very difficult to react to emerging risk, very difficult to react to changing business models. So we're now seeing a number of those organizations, and again, I call them GRC 2.0 for a reason, right? That totally believe in the value that GRC gives them, but they realize that they have to redo and retransform in order to be more standardized, in order to be more scalable for the future. And in many cases, the realization also was that the software has moved on, the tools have moved on. So some of them are changing to a completely new tool because there are better tools out there now. Others have realized that in order to benefit from how the tool improves over time, they cannot be too customized, because then many of the improvements just don't fit back to the processes that they have in their own organizations. So both are very, very valid and very important point of views. And I'm sure in the audience here, we will have both of them. So we have the risk management functions who are maybe a little bit behind the rest of the organizations that quickly have to do something to catch up, to be seen as a business enabler, to be seen as a trusted advisor again. And then we have the other ones who've done all the right things and now have to look at what they've done, learn from it, and continue to improve and continue to invent and continue to maybe even change the systems that they use doing it in order to continue to do all the good things that they have done since their initial integrated risk management approach. I'll pause here just to see if we have any immediate questions. And if that's not the case, then I'll hand over to Claire, who's going to tell you a lot more about what KPMG point of view is and how we believe we can help both of those scenarios, clients in both of those scenarios that I've just described that we're seeing in the market. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you so much, Jens. And your insights into the market are truly invaluable, because I think as KPMG, that's one thing that we can provide you with the insights and the lessons learned across what we're seeing our clients, including yourselves, as to the journey and the evolution of integrated risk management that they are going on themselves. And I stress that this is a journey, and we all have our lessons learned, and we can share our war stories as well. So my name is Claire Doherty. I have over 10 years experience in GRC implementations. So I've gone through and I've been through the GRC 2.0 wave, but I've also helped all organizations really look at what we call digitalization and transformation of their integrated risk management. So obviously these are all great buzzwords that you're hearing across the industry right now, but I really want to make sure that I bring this to life today. So my role today is to really give you insight into some of the challenges and the disruptors that you may be experiencing, and then to go into what we call what KPMG offers is powered risks. So a really outcomes-based approach to integrated risk management, really setting up for the future of risk. And then my colleague, I'll pass on to my colleague Arpit, who will actually do a deeper dive into one of these tools that we talk about. And I will present to you a target operating model, or a future state of risk. And a part of this target operating model is the technology component. And as what Jens said, tools have evolved over the last 5 to 10 years, and we're seeing new players in the marketplace as well. So we will give you a small demo today and really deep dive and bring to life how these tools and technologies can really enable and assist with the integrated risk management transformation. But as risk and audit leaders yourselves, I'm sure you'll appreciate that at organizations, you need to really find a faster way to adapt, evolve, and really stay competitive in this marketplace. And I think we've all seen this, especially over the last 2 years. I wouldn't say many people predicted this pandemic. And over the last 2 years, we've really seen how organizations have to be at the forefront of, especially when Florian spoke about the CEOs, innovation and digitalization. So we've recognized at KPMG that there's so much change and disruption in the marketplace, and so much noise that is really challenging for all organizations to cope with. So how is your integrated risk management framework really supporting this? And later on, as I said, I would do a brief demo into what we've called powered risk. And powered risk really allows organizations like yourself to implement a future-ready integrated risk management operating model enabled by technology, which we'll also present to you today, that generates immediate value and really puts you on the path to innovation. So that's exactly what's at the forefront of the mind of the CEOs. But as Jens and Florian also both spoke about, is the insights across the market and the drastic changes to keep up or to see the opportunistic view and to be at the forefront in order to stay relevant. And I think, as I said, over the last couple of years, especially in the financial service sector, you'll have seen this a lot, especially with digitalization of some of your products. But what are our different stakeholders seeing? Or I should say expecting. So investors are looking for low-cost solutions to drive confidence and in strategy and how we represent current and projected performance. Customers are looking to ensure that they have a safe and sound provider in the services that they've really signed up for. We've got our communities as well. There's been a lot of pressure from community stakeholders looking for businesses to deliver services in a manner that is socially responsible, regardless of the prevailing business conditions or disruptors in the market. And ESG is a huge topic that is in the market right now. We all know the regulators, well-loved regulators, are really looking to ensure that the banks and financial institutions are really conducting themselves in a manner that is not destructive to the marketplace, harmful to consumers and customers, contradictory to laws and regulations. Employees are looking for greater confidence in their business and how they do their daily job. And I think we've all seen working from home practices over the last 2 years has really changed the environment and expectation amongst employees. And then we've got our partners and suppliers who are seeking to maintain strong reputation with engaging with organizations and adequately addressing financial, regulatory, and market shifts. So these are just some of the stakeholders, and it demonstrates how you are tackling business disruptions from every single angle. So it's not only from senior management or expectations from the board, but you've experienced this from every single angle that you can imagine. And keeping up with pace is really difficult. So as Jens and Florian alluded to, risk can no longer be reactive or the red tape within the organization, but really helping you identify, manage, and be proactive and working with the business to not only identify these disruptors, but to make sure that you're strategic and growing within the organizations. Next slide, please. So here's a polling question, and please be honest, this is anonymous, and we will provide the results after this presentation. But first question here, and you'll see on the poll, which of the following statements best describe how risk services are delivered in your organization? And you'll see there's answers A to E. And I think A, as Jens alluded to, some of our clients are less mature in their risk management practices. And then you've got right to E, which is probably the nirvana state of any risk management practice. And they are the true people, the true functions that are really striving to be strategic and work with the business to be that true business partner. So I'll give you just a minute, and then we'll actually the poll will actually remain on for about a minute, and I'll continue the presentation. So when we think about how risk is changing, so I've spoken myself about the business disruptors that we've seen, especially over the last 2 years. Jens has spoken about his insights into some of his experiences with our clients within the region as it comes to integrated risk management. And Florian has also provided that overarching view of risk and disruptors across the industry. But when we think about how risk is changing and where it's headed, we have to think about the future of the risk function and the CRO agenda. So we've got extreme automation to risk and compliance and technology has the ability to impact organization agility, skills and talent, and ultimately unlock new analytics and insights to really help business make those strategic risk-based decisions. So the common challenges that we are really seeing our clients facing prior to embark on this risk transformation journey is, as Jens spoke about, bad data. And again, there's no excuse. Siloed organizations, manual reporting, and high IT costs. So these are just a few, and some of these may resonate with you. So all of these combined can be addressed through a holistic risk transformation. And later on in this presentation, I will go through a target operating model, and I will speak to how important it is to address every single element of that target operating model to really, as I said, get that holistic view of risk transformation. So this is generally enabled by the right digital solution. So risk has the opportunity to address these challenges, ensuring that the business has the right information to make the strategic decisions. So what we're seeing at our clients is that risk is no longer want to be a back office function, but they're truly partners with the business, ensuring strategic, agile, and future opportunities are embraced. And I really love this slide with the rhino because, again, it demonstrates how risk is really changing, and there's pressure on risk to change, as this headline says there, to tackle risk head on. And the key thing I do want you to take away is that how can you, as a risk professional, as a risk leader within your organization, really be at the forefront and provide strategic advice and support to the business to help the business make really strategic risk-based decisions. So again, we're removing that red tape, we're being that true business partner to the organization, and we're helping the overall growth and helping the business achieve overall strategy. And the same thing for internal audit as well. You have to obviously have that transparency across the organization and be that true advisor to ensure that the right controls are in place to help management truly understand the risk and make those risk-based decisions. Next slide, please. So what are the pain points, the common pain points? And as you read this slide, some of this may resonate with you at your organization, but we've just put on a slide some of the pain points, and again, Jens spoke to some of these prior, that we see that our clients are experiencing when it comes to digitalization of risk across the organization. As I said, some of you might be nodding at these, and as I said, it truly resonates with the current state that you're experiencing. But what we do see is that the second line of defense often still operates in a siloed manner. There's no single source of truth. And when my colleague Arpit dives into the technology, we'll also explain to you how important it is to ensure that those what we call foundational elements or spinal components, which is your risk process, risk and control taxonomy, are common and really have an enterprise view across the organization. Otherwise, there is no single source of truth whereby management are making key risk-based decisions. So we see inefficiencies in the effort required for critical business reports. And I was actually just speaking to a client earlier today when it came to regulatory expectations. And we're seeing more and more that the regulators are expecting the data, risk-based data, to be on hand and upfront. And the amount of manual effort and spreadsheets, and again, this may resonate with your organization, amount of manual effort, the hours that go into creating and aggregating spreadsheets to create these reports for both senior management, the board, and also regulators is really cumbersome. And so often this is a huge pain point that we're seeing. And then again, on the technology side, I recently went into one of our clients to understand across the second line of defense, so the risk, the IT risk, the procurement, I dealt with procurement as well, to really understand how many legacy systems they had actually today when dealing with risk, and it was just astonishing. And some of these actual systems were not actually adequately supported and maintained, which is pretty scary, thinking that if something did go wrong with the system, and we all know technology today is difficult in itself, but and I'll speak to later on in this presentation, when you rip off what we call rip off the band-aid and really understand across the organization how many legacy systems you're dealing with from an IT perspective, and you understand the maintenance costs associated with all of those systems, that really is the aha moment, and really often at organizations really drives that digitalization agenda for digitalization. So this then leads to, like, as you would understand, an inability uh, for the business itself, so the first line of defense, to really make insightful, business-led, data-driven decisions, and that then leads to the lack of confidence in the second and third line of defense. And often when we speak to the first line, the theme that we get is, well, they just don't understand us. They really don't understand what we do, and how can they help us? And again, when I showed the slide with the rhinoceros, it's about being that true business professional and partnering with the business to help them understand their risks and make risk-based decisions. Next slide, please. So this is a common picture, which is the 3 lines of defense. So this is as risk professionals, you would understand this. In theory, the 3 lines of defense model generally works. But in the financial services sector, and also in other sectors as well, we're seeing firsthand of how inefficient it is once it's been operationalized. So we have the business making strategic decisions, keeping up with pace and change, as we mentioned before, meeting stakeholder expectations, again, the stakeholders I mentioned in the previous slide, and understanding the business disruptors that come with that, and really driving to stay relevant in the market. They themselves are the risk owners and should, in theory, and we're looking at the green boxes below, the business units, should in theory have real-time data to help them make informed decisions to ultimately help achieve growth and the organizational strategy. The second line of defense we often see work in silos, and I said being reactive to managing risk and not understanding the true business needs. Then we have the third line, providing a level of independent assurance that risk management and internal control framework is working as it's designed. But how can, and we have some chief internal audit officers on this WebEx, but how, as you as CI, chief internal officers, how can you really do your job if you really do not have transparency across the organization? Then we've got the board. The board has increased pressures from shareholders, customers, regulators, and are truly accountable for business and strategic growth. They are demanding insights from the business to ensure that they have the right information to steer the organization into the right direction and across the horizon. So from siloed operations, lack of a common risk language, and no repository of risk and controls across the organization, this is really the call for change, a revolution of integrated risk management. And it's where I challenge you as risk professionals today to ensure your organization is set up for a success. As Jens said at the start, there's no excuse. you can be at the forefront. So risk should have a seat at the table for all strategic decisions. But in order to add value, you need insights, real-time insights to help you understand the business. And as I said from the start, be that true business partner. So this is really the era of digital revolution in integrated risk management. Move to the next slide, please. So digital transformation is a fundamental component of continuous business transformation, and it's been an essential part of delivering better outcomes across all functions. I was just speaking to another client the other day, and their risk management transformation actually has come under the umbrella, and it was actually a regional bank, has actually come under the 4-year digitalization plan across the bank. So over the last couple of years, they've been working to digitalize many of their products in the first line. And then they've seen that in order to keep up, that there has to be a component of digitalization of risk. So they've really embarked on this, what we call digitalization of risk transformation. As I spoke about before, I just wanted to go into some key components of IRM digital transformation. So I talk about ripping off the Band-Aid, really understanding the legacy systems across your business and assess the clear road and path to enable your integrated risk management by a modern digital technology platform. Some of the key buzzwords that we're also hearing is artificial intelligence and machine learning. So this is not new to any of us, but we can assess how well we use both AI and machine learning to really help us better understand and monitor our controls, which will ultimately feed into assessing and monitoring our risk environment. Vision first and tech second. So with creaking processes, legacy systems, siloed data, and a lack of insight and potentially shortage of skilled talent, we actually haven't touched on that one, but over the last couple of years with COVID especially, we've seen a lack of talent in the marketplace. Transformation can seem very overwhelming. Surely this can easily be solved, though, by implementing a new technology, partly at best. While a new technology platform is great, we need to look, and we'll go into this in the next point, we need to look inwards before we look outwards. So technology is not just the answer. And when I go deeper dive into the target operating model, you'll understand that technology is just really one piece of the larger pie when we look at integrated risk management. And by tackling a business-led, future-focused operating model, you can really add more value across the organization, realizing process efficiencies, business effectiveness, and improved controls all up. Looking inwards to look outwards. As Florian said in the first slide, we had 89% of CEOs believe that digitalization of operation and creation of the next generation operating models is needed. And they recognize, and this is 89% recognize the importance of a true digitalization. As I said, the client that I was speaking to earlier this week, the integrated risk management digitalization came under the broader organizational digitalization strategy, and that's just how important that they see risk is in across the whole organization in keeping up with change. So I'll actually move on to the next slide. So one of the key benefits to risk transformation, and I'm sure some of you, if you've already embarked on this journey or are in the process of embarking on this journey, you might have experienced some of this. So obviously improve transparency, and I think this is very important for internal audit professionals to get that true insight across the organization. understanding your control inventory, and I'll actually jump into a use case next. And it was as part of any GRC implementation, we usually do a control rationalization process. And at this particular client, we had in excess of 7,000 controls, which we actually rationalized down to just under 1,500. So that was a huge effort of understanding the controls across the organization and realizing that there are common points of these controls. What we haven't spoke about, but again is so important, is the promotion of risk culture. So again, any transformation, I spoke to that it's a revolution, not an evolution, of integrated risk management. And in order to do that, you need to have your people behind you, and you really need to change the culture of the organization and increase the risk awareness. Ensuring that risk is embedded in your enterprise assurance, and improving risk management through automation. And again, we'll actually go through and jump into the ServiceNow tool later on, so that you can see how this whole integrated risk management framework can be truly enabled by technology. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give some of my experience. As Florian said at the start, I have worked with globally, so both in the US, Australia, and then in Hong Kong and the greater Australia Pacific region with GRC implementation. So I've worked across the financial service sector, and one of the largest enterprise GRC projects I worked on was a large global bank. So the Chief Internal Audit Officer actually approached us with complete frustration, noting that every month he had to report to the board on audit issues and risks. But he was actually not confident that the data that he was reporting was accurate and gave a true picture of the bank. So we assisted the Chief Internal Audit Officer build a business case for change across the organization, understanding that this was much more than a technology implementation. This was truly a first-hand use case of breaking down the silos and creating a common risk taxonomy, and ultimately changing, and this is what I spoke to before, ultimately changing the culture of risk at the bank. So teaming up with the Chief Risk Officer and the Chief Compliance Officer, the Chief Audit Officer was able to build a business case for change across the organization, clearly mapping out the return on investment across the next 5 years. And this is something that we're actually seeing a lot of boards demand a lot more. What is the return on investment of this integrated risk management transformation and technology implementation? So the business case was unanimously supported by the Chief Executive Officer and approved by the board. But what was so important in this particular use case, and this is why I'm bringing it up today, is that it had support from the top, what we call tone at the top. So the message was clear that this was much broader than just the internal audit. This really spanned across the 3 lines of defense and was much larger than a technology implementation. The risk culture and the change management components were really key to success. This was a multi-year implementation, so it was a 3-year implementation that saw the creation of a common risk taxonomy. We saw the rationalization of controls and cataloging and streamlining controls, and really ultimately empowering the business to make these risk-based driven decisions, because the ultimate user of the tool in the end, the technology, was the first line. And that was the key imperative of the Chief Internal Audit Officer and the Chief Risk Officer. They did not want to be the users of the tool. They wanted to empower the business to really embrace and understand that they own the risk, and that it was their mandate to manage the risk, so that they can make those true decisions and be opportunistic and see their organization grow. So it really, as I said, improved visibility across the whole organization. And this was a global bank. So we actually did the integrated risk management and technology rollout across the Americas, across EMA, and across Asia itself. We saw improved decision making from intelligent reports, and a lot of the reporting that we used to model the data out was actually the demands from the regulators. So what was the regulators asking from our client to give real-time data and insights of risk across the organization? And as part of the return on investment and the business case, they actually calculated it saved approximately 10,000 plus hours annually on resources that were bogged down by manual tasks I spoke about before, and Jens also spoke about the manual creation of reports and Excel spreadsheets and the manual aggregation of risks across your organization. And that was all solved through embarking on this integrated risk management transformation enabled by the technology. Next slide. So I just briefly wanted to go to, because I'm mindful of time, and I want to, today we'll focus on our powered methodology and target operating model. But the key questions in the next section that I want to present is how will you be forward thinking to design and implement a risk program potentially enabled by technology so that you really can become the true risk function of the future. So as we said, there's so many business disruptors across globally, but how are you keeping up, and how are you enabling the business to use these insights to make those strategic and operational risk-based decisions? So we'll just go to another polling question. You'll see that on the slide. So which of the following statements best describes risk management processes in your organization? And then we've actually got another question below that. Which of the following statements best describes how people are involved in the risk management of your organization? So really two important questions. So one tackling on the process, and then one tackling on the people. And as I said, not the realization that people is not a part of it is a downfall to any transformational process, because it all comes down to culture and how your people within your organization respond to risk and see the upside and the downside of risk, and how that links to the ultimate strategy of your organization. So those polling questions will remain on the side for at least a minute, but I'll quickly continue the presentation. So as I said, I'll quickly go over KBMG's what we call powered risk. So you aspire to be more agile and really have a holistic vision of risk. So at KPMG, we've really created a business-led, a functional business-led solution with many entry points. So powered risk is part of the powered enterprise family. So there's also powered finance, IT, etc. And so at KPMG, we've got professionals that really specialize in each one of these areas. With powered risk in particular, we have six process domain areas, and under each of those we have specific assets, or what we call accelerators. So what we've done over the last 5 years, and we've really seen that we've had competitive advantage in the marketplace, is really help you understand again what your future function of risk could look like based on leading practice, and how you can really optimize your journey, and we show you what good looks like. So again, this is a business-led transformation, understanding the true holistic target operating model and how you have that complete view of risk within your organization, ensuring that all aspects of the risk function are ready for the future and transform as your organization transforms. Next slide, please. So you'll see on the left-hand side, we have the powered methodology, which is divided into 5 stages: vision, validate, construct, and deploy. So these are really the phases which underpin our risk assets and have been proven to reduce implementation time of an integrated risk management framework or technology by up to 50%. So as I said, we show you what good looks like and we work with you in the validation phase. Instead of starting from scratch and drafting business requirements, we utilize our future state process flows, which we call our accelerators, and we'll work with you and ask you to validate these. And these are all pre-configured within the system. And after this, we'll dive deeper into a tool to show how we have pre-configured these so that you can really see what your risk management function can look like. So the time saving relating to the historic phase being the defining of the business requirements, understanding your current state, and then drafting the future state is significant. So we're actually seeing for a solution of risk management that should usually take 6 to 9 months for technology implementation be reduced by up to 20 weeks. And again, this is all due to the assets that we have on that you can see on the right hand side. So we've got the process taxonomy flows, the future state flows, we've got the UAT scripts, etc. Next slide. So again, we have another polling question. So which of the following risk statements best describes the risk reporting in your organization? And again, we talk about transparency across the organization when we think of reporting, and we think about the spinal components or the data components within your technology and how easy it is to actually produce some of these reports and take out some of those manual efforts. So that polling question, you should see it on the side, and if not, it will come up, but please provide your insights. So again, what underpins, and I spoke about before, what underpins the KPMG powered model is the target operating model. As I said, it's 6 components. It's the people, it's the process, the people, the service delivery model, the technology, the data and insights, and governance. And we're in a traditional GRC implementation or historic, or what we're seeing our competitors use, is only 3 components, which is the process, the people, and technology. But we're recognizing it's much more than that, and you need to tackle all 6 components in order, as you see on the page, to really see these insights, savings, flexibility, and trust amongst the organization. So again, transformation isn't just about technology. Tech is simply the enabler to that holistic integrated risk management transformation. Next slide, please. And again, as I said, a part of the target operating model, you see that this, I spoke about the 6 elements, was governance. So this next polling question relates to governance. So which of the following statements best describes the status of risk governance in your organization? And this is so important, as it's, again, from Florian's, when Florian spoke about the CEO and what's keeping up CEOs at night. And then again, to yourselves, how do you ensure that there's enough governance across the organization, that really that you are embedding a solid and future forward looking integrated risk management framework? So this is why we've built the powered enterprise solutions. We're helping organizations like you really think about the future and see leading practices that are underpinned by technology. We're seeing how you can transform your business at a much more faster, efficient, and agile rate. And really, it's ultimately to help your risk function establish a solid platform approach to continuous digitalization of risk management. And as Jens spoke about prior, the GRC 2.0 wave, we don't want a GRC 3.0 wave. We want to avoid that. We don't want history to repeat itself. So that's why through leading practices, we've really built the risk management function of the future. And then we're able to show you what that looks like. Next slide. So now we'll jump into their technology. And one more polling question before we actually do that deeper dive. So which one of these following statements best describes the uses of tools at your organization? Now, some of you may not have a specialized tool or a single source, and sometimes we see clients, they have multiple tools. As I said, in the use case example I gave you prior, what we call ripping off the Band-Aid and understanding the legacy systems. Or some of you might have already embarked or are on the journey of that true integrated risk management system. So again, that will stay up on the poll for the next minute. Next slide, please. So we work at KBMG with all the big GRC, what we call the GRC vendors within the industry. And as you'll see on the left-hand side is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And we've also, there's also the Forrester Wave report that's released on a periodic basis. But this really gives the strengths and weaknesses of the tech providers within the industry and their niche or sweet spots. Next slide, please. So today we'll actually give you a brief demo, mindful of time, we'll give you a brief demo of the ServiceNow integrated risk management technology. And as you can see, ServiceNow, we do have a strategic alliance with ServiceNow across the region, and they are a leader in the integrated risk management solution. And you'll see that when my colleague actually runs through and brings to life what we call the future of risk as it relates to the risk and control self-assessment process. Next slide, please. I just want to make very clear that ServiceNow, that IRM is quite broad and it actually covers a suite of different modules. So today we'll only do a deep dive into the risk module, but rest assured there is an audit component, there is business continuity, etc. So again, Arpit will now give the demo and do a deeper dive to show you how to bring to life that integrated risk management enabled by the ServiceNow technology. Thank you, Arpit.
Right. Thank you, Claire. Let me start sharing my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. All right. So like Claire mentioned, so this is how a ServiceNow screen of a risk, if we are raising a risk looks like. So for a risk, we can specify its name and its description. Further, we can also specify a risk statement to which a risk belongs to, and even the category of the risk. So for this particular demo, we have specified this risk category as an IT, but we can also specify different risk categories like cyber, finance, or HR, or any kind of risk we have. Here, we also see an entity to which this risk belongs. So this particular entity forms the backbone or is the architect or is the backbone of a risk, the entire IRM solution. We can also now this entity, this particular entity can be like, a business unit, it can be a department, it can be a location. All right, so we can also specify who is the owner of that particular risk. On the risk form also, we can see how many assessments, prior assessments for this risks we have taken and their scores. And also the controls which are governing those risks. What are controls are in my place, which is helping me to mitigate those risks. For the purpose of the demo and interest of time, we have already initiated the risk assessment for this particular risk, and this is how a risk assessment form looks like. So basically in ServiceNow, we can do the risk assessment in two ways. One is manual, wherein we send out a questionnaire to the risk owner or the entity owner. and they fill in the questionnaire, and the risk score is updated manually. But as part of our powered offerings, we have enabled automated risk management, wherein it helps you to calculate the inherent score, the control assessment score, the residual score risk score automatically based upon certain parameters. So now once the risk owner is doing the risk assessment, right, he can go to the risk inherent assessment tab. So inherent assessment is calculated based upon certain factors. Now every organization can have different factors. So these are pretty much configurable, right? So for this demo, again, we have configured two factors, the impact and likelihood. So under impact, we have sub factors whose response. So every impact will say, for example, financial impact. What is my financial impact for this particular risk? So we are given options like low, medium, high, and every response will be defined by a qualitative weight. How much weightage is there for this response? And accordingly, my score is calculated. Once we have filled in all the responses for all these factors, I get my final computed inherent score. So how does it get calculated? There are various ways which ServiceNow provides. So you can do a weighted average, you can do product, sum. There are different, and it can be scripted also. So there are various ways depending upon the organization's maturity or their how they want it. This result for inherent risk is calculated. The tool also gives you an option to override the computed score. So for example, a risk owner is not happy that, okay, this is my score. So he can check this checkbox and provide some comments if he wants to override this score. Once the inherent risk is calculated, we move on to the control risk scores. So controls, it clearly says that, okay, what all controls are there in place for this risk and how effective it is in mitigating that particular risk. So we can add new controls, we can remove certain controls if they are no longer required, right? And based upon the mitigation effectiveness, we are given options like, okay, my control is effective, it needs improvement, or no change. Again, based upon the weightage, the score is calculated as 2 for the computed effectiveness. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we can again override this computed effectiveness score, and we can provide the comments as to why we want to override. Moving on to the residual assessment, the residual assessment gets calculated automatically. Again, so there are various ways to calculate. ServiceNow the tool gives us various ways to calculate the residual assessment. It can be either like through a matrix. So like when I say matrix, so we can create a matrix in ServiceNow saying that, okay, if my inherent score is 4 and my control assessment score is 2, the residual score should be 2. Or we can do a subtraction or a product or a weighted average. So there are various ways in which you can calculate your residual risk score. As part of the workflow, how the risk assessment is being done, if we see here, so once it is ready for assess, we are calculating the inherent assessment, the control assessment, and residual assessment. Once we have all these scores in place, now the risk owner or the person who's taking the assessment needs to respond to the risk. Once we respond to the risk, so we have a couple of risk response which a user can select, which is we can mitigate a risk, we can accept a risk, we can transfer a risk, or we can avoid a risk. So for this demo, we selected we will be mitigating this particular risk. As soon as we select a response, there is a risk response task which gets created, and it follows its own workflow. Right. So for example, and I need to, when I open this, it can be assigned to any person. It can be a risk owner, it can be a BU head, it can be a department head, and these can be configured. These can be configured automatically in ServiceNow. In the workflow, we see that, okay, we need to provide a plan of what is our plan to mitigate that risk. And once we have those plan and certain fields which can be filled, the workflow progresses to review and can be closed. This workflow in the tool is pretty much again configurable. We can add approvals if you require that. Okay, someone has to approve the mitigation plan. Till what date I can specify, I can configure the tool to till what date is the mitigation plan valid to. And all these activities are audited automatically, like who made the changes, at what timestamp are captured in the tool automatically. Once the mitigation plan or my risk response task is closed, the risk assessment automatically moves to monitor state. The assessment summary of the risk is automatically captured on the risk itself. And like I mentioned earlier, right, we can see how many assessments have already been done for this particular risk. Moving on to the reporting part. So for example, if we have a manager or a CRO, right, who wants to have an overall picture or a holistic view of how my entity or an organization is doing in terms of risk overview. So ServiceNow provides a lot of inbuilt dashboards. So for example, for a risk overview dashboard, we can at any given moment of time, and these are, mind you, these are real-time reports. So at any given moment of time, we can see, okay, from an entity perspective, how many are there as in high inherent risk? How many risks are there where the inherent risk is high or moderate or very low inherent risks? It also helps us to categorize one of the reports. So there are various ways we can slice and dice the data, right? So one of the ways we can show the risks by category itself. So okay, I have like 1200 in my entity. I have like 1200 operational risks. How many IT risks are there? Financial risks are there? One of the important, or one of the most interesting graphs what we have here is the risk heat map. So this actually shows how many risks are there which have very high impact. So for example, very high impact, and the likelihood of that happening is extremely likely. So I can see that, okay, there are 17 risks, and these are all clickable reports. So if I click on them, right, it takes me to all those risks across different entities where the likelihood of that risk happening is extremely high and the impact is very high, right? So these are the certain reports which ServiceNow provides. Also, the tool can provide the trend analysis of a report. So if, for example, we can see the operational risk management report, right? So if the management wants to see, okay, how I've been doing quarter by quarter basis. So we can also the trend analysis can be done. So so for example, in my last quarter of 2021, the number of residual risks were 4. And in the current quarter of 2022, the number of high residual risk has changed to 5. So there's a change of 25% and it shows the trend analysis. All right, I think this concludes a very quick high-level demo of the tool. Claire, over to you.
Thank you so much, Arpit. And I think that really demonstrates what we spoke about, building a truly flexible tool that really evolves and really gives that true insights to the organization when it comes to integrated risk management. So not only understand the organization from a product or an entity level, but holistically across the organization, from CRO right up into the board. And as I said prior, that the integrated risk management solution is just one of the solutions of the total of what ServiceNow can offer, and we can definitely if anyone is interested, do a deeper dive into audit, third-party risk management, etc. So it is a huge range of product suite in under that overarching integrated risk management umbrella. So just to close before I hand it back to Florian, so these statistics are from ServiceNow, but it really shows how the achieved value of that integrated risk management transformation enabled by the technology. You're looking at improved productivity in the first line, improved productivity in the second line, as you can imagine across your risk and compliance team, definitely from internal and external audit, and also improved compliance. And this is a huge factor within a lot of our clients, that there's missed on opportunities, or they're one of the biggest risks within the organization, that they're not meeting regulatory requirements. And then again, what I spoke about before, ripping off the band-aid and understand the legacy systems. So some of the key statistics from some of the ServiceNow clients is the return on investment over the last 3 years, less than 6 months payback across the organization. and over 8.6 million US dollars benefits over the third year. And that's been calculated by understanding the manual effort that was in the current state prior to the implementation of the technology. And this again is what a lot of the boards and senior managements are requesting to understand the return on investment, because any GRC implementation or integrated risk management framework transformation is a large investment across the organization. So and the business case I used from my experience working with the chief internal audit officer to really understand, to create that business case and create that revolution of change across the organization is imperative. And my closing message is to really challenge you again as risk and audit professionals of how you can really be that true business partner to the first line, to the business, how you can understand what they do and the risks that they face, so that they as risk owners can make the true strategic, risk-based, data-driven decisions. So without ado, Florian, I'll pass to you for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire. So yeah, before we go into the Q&A, just to, I think, reiterate and emphasize some of the key takeaways and the key messages, I think, to remember and to reflect on how we can apply this in our own organization. I think the first one is, well, yes, as we've seen from the challenges and the obstacles that are in the way of effective risk management, I think it is clear that a more integrated way of risk management is really giving this value to the organization. But now, what are two of those key components of integrated risk management? Well, I would say the first one is that across all of the three lines of defense, we need to be able to speak the same risk language. What does that mean in very practical terms? As you've seen in the demo, for example, if we have a common taxonomy, a common list of our business processes, a common list of the risks that we have, actually that will facilitate getting a common understanding and being able to speak the same risk language. And it's not only about speaking the same language, it's also about having the same visibility, not having, say, narrowed vision of only your own respective line of defense siloed view on risk, but having something that allows you to get a more comprehensive and transparent view on risk. So this is the first component, in my view, of integrated risk management. The second component is what we spoke about earlier, risk management often being perceived as reactive or an obstacle to growth. I think a lot of it is related to the way how risk management is actually embedded into the business processes. So again, if we involve the risk considerations, risk management early on in the process, be it the strategy development, be it new product development, the earlier we include and embed risk considerations in there, the more value will be provided. So that also is one of the factors of effective risk management. Now, with that in mind, integrated risk management, how can we actually get started with moving towards that integrated way? And this is the second point here. I think we need to have a very clear vision, because as we've touched on multiple parts throughout this webinar, risk management, it's not just an issue and a job of the second line of defense. It needs first line, second line, and third line. So that means we need to get on board multiple stakeholders. And what is really a very meaningful way of achieving this is by formulating and illustrating this vision to have these people on board and get their involvement and support for such an initiative. The third point here is, once we do have a clear vision, we have to move towards that. And well, how can we achieve this? Well, then we have to translate the vision into our target operating model, which helps us to define what are the capabilities that we need, the skills, the processes so that we can shape the target operating model that will help us to realize that vision. And now the fourth point, and that is intentionally mentioned now as the last point here, as a last step, we can consider how can we enable this operating model in an efficient and effective way by deploying technology. So we should actually not start by looking at, okay, which technology can we buy and plug in, and then things will improve automatically. No, we have to be clear on what is our vision, what is our operating model, and then we can find the suitable technology solution that will allow us to then operationalize this operating model in an effective way. So those are some of the key takeaways before we go into the Q&A session now. So if you want, you still have a few minutes to post additional questions. And also while you are doing this, also please take this opportunity to scan this QR code to provide some feedback about this event, because we are really keen to hear from you. I think firstly, what did you think about this event? How was it useful? What can we do better? And also from another perspective, for future events, what are some of the topics that you would be keen to hear more about? So please also give us some feedback that will help us then to improve these webinars and prepare for future events in the future. And now let's have a look at some of the questions that have come through. Okay, so I do see there is a question around, since we have introduced some of these software solutions, so there's a question, do we have to kind of buy such a solution from a vendor, or can we as well utilize an in-house developed solution? So Kun Amnat, would you like to share some perspective on this question?
I think, okay, yeah, thanks for the question. So to answer this one, I would say that it's possible to use in-house software development. However, you need to consider so many things. For example, you need to consider that the time to implementation would be take really longer, right? Because you need to develop your in-house system before you going further to configure into the system. Those kind of things that quite take a long time to be developed. That would be the first point that you probably need to consider. And also the one really important point is that you need to develop to ensure that you have the proven and robust functionality in the system, which is really big task as well that you need to think of, which functionality that you need to have in the software. That should be the key parts you need to consider. And also the last thing is that you need to consider about how you maintain and whatever that you need to do the enhancement. That should be the key consideration that you need to spend in terms of the internal resources that you need to spend in order to maintain and enhancement in the future, which is really quite much more important to be considered. That would be the answer for this one. Yep, and over back to Florence.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Kun Amnat, for this. Just looking into another question here. Can we provide some indicative kind of time frame on how long it would take to implement such a GRC solution? So how about Kun Sirigan? Would you like to provide an answer for that question?
Yeah, sure. For the time frame of the implement of the new GRC technology, what KPMG Power methodology can do is in the 20 weeks of time frame. Why we can do that? Because of the KPMG Power risks that we try to present you before is provide us the template or the guideline or the inventory for every perspective of the target operating model for the process taxonomy, the process for the people role and responsibility, and the inventory is also prepared to support the vendor in the market already. So that's why it's accelerate all of the process of the implementation to be by in the 20 weeks. And I would like to highlight again on our power risk tools, because of mostly of the client or the bank or the insurance will jump into the technology implementation by select the vendor to do the implementation and underestimate on the part of the process or the business requirement from the process, what the people will do or what is the target operating model on the people and the outsourcing things, and jump to the technology first. That one will be have a rework on when they have a technology and they would like to change the people and the process to support the technology. But for the KPMG, that we would like to highlight that we will start from the target operating model first, then select the technology that support the process and the people and the outsourcing the delivery service, also with the data that we have and the governance that we would like to do. So that's why we said that we can do it within the 20 weeks campaign.
Okay, thank you so much, Consirigan. And conscious of time, since we are approaching the end of our webinar, let's not miss out this chance to maybe just ask Claire for some further insights based on the experience that she has gained from doing this for so many years already at both the global and regional level. So Claire, any final kind of thoughts or insights that you would like to share with the audience before we close?
Yeah, just Florian, on the inbuilt system, and I have seen it being done before, and I would caution against it, because if you these technology providers, they are specialists in the industry at integrated risk management tools. They provide approximately 6-month upgrades, so you're always ensuring, and I spoke about before the GRC 2.0 wave, where organizations were all at the forefront of GRC implementations, but they designed their systems so that there was over customizations and inflexibility that they couldn't upgrade their systems going forward. And we often see this with inbuilt systems themselves. It's built at a time fit for purpose for that particular use case, without thinking the future in mind, and how can that system really evolve and grow as the organization grows as well. And often we're seeing that the tool providers also working to upgrade their systems, so they're utilizing what I spoke about before, the artificial intelligence, the machine learning to continuously monitor controls, are building in those APIs and plugins so that you have that data and that you have that insight to make really true risk-based decisions. So these specialized GRC tools are at the forefront of AI and machine learning, and really are developing tools for the future. So I do caution, I think in-house built systems are for a point in time, and potentially you should think for the future and really get that enterprise buy-in. As I said, it really comes under the larger digitalization effort across the organization. Thank you, Florian.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Claire. Yeah, I think that's good to emphasize that we're looking for a sustainable technology solution that can nicely integrate and probably, take in
expand
various
as well.
needs. Correct,
Yep.
correct. Yes. All right. Okay. I think we have reached now the end of our 90 minutes for this webinar. So I do hope that you found this useful, that you got some ideas, some insights that you feel are useful actually for you. And well, yes, please provide us your feedback, and we are looking forward to either speak with you about these topics separately, or to welcome you on any of our future upcoming webinar events. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all our KPMG colleagues as well for their valuable insights and knowledge sharing. So yeah, I wish everyone has a great rest of the day and stay safe. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.